Hey, IT friends, how's it going? So, I was talking to an MSP today, and this was a good MSP. This is a well run, mid market MSP doing a lot of things right, consistently working to improve their maturity, um, good staff, good, consistent marketing. Pretty much just all the check boxes. I'm sure there's some things that aren't perfect, but like all the check boxes that you would generally expect, that we would all agree are the hallmarks of somebody who's doing stuff right. And they were telling me that they just recently lost out on a pretty killer deal, and it was a warm referral from a mutual client of the referral. So like, that's the dream referral, right? Like an existing client of ours that loves us enough to bring us in to another client of theirs. And they lost the deal to a fairly decently sized MSP. In this case, it was a national MSP, but it was one of the weird ones that all operate independently. And I don't think the fact they were a national MSP had a factor. The biggest factor seemed to be that this other MSP was bigger. And that got me thinking to something that I hadn't thought about in a very, very long time, since I too was a modestly sized lower mid market MSP. Does size matter? So, flippant and sarcastic humor aside, um, I I think yes and no, and I want to talk about that for a little bit because, well, I think the old joke. It's not the size of the ship; it's the motion of the ocean. Yeah, I don't think that's wrong in our MSP comparison here. I think a mature, dialed in MSP that really has a good idea of their ICP, their buyer persona, and how to deliver it probably usually will beat out a larger MSP that doesn't know that. But that didn't happen here. And if you think about it, yeah, it's not the size of the ship; it's the motion of the ocean. But if I blow past you in a super tanker, does it really matter how good you are with your rowboat? And I'm not sure it does. We're going to talk about that. So to get this right out of the way, I think there's two kind of bookends that you need to fall between to start picking up SMB clients that are worth your time as an MSP. I definitely think you can be too small. And I think that there are businesses that will not engage with you when it's only you and one or two other people, based just on that, because there's a lot of risk to that, to everything being tied to you. Sorry, small MSPs. Doesn't mean you can't do great and have big clients. I do think there are people that will just say no to that. And on the flip side, I do think there are some businesses at the upper boundary of what we would call SMB that maybe have 1,000 employees, that just from the scale of what they need probably do need a robustly sized MSP. So for the time being, let's flush those two categories out of the way. Let's assume that you've got, I don't know, at least 3 staff members. So you've shifted the risk that if you get hit by a bus, the client will have no MSP. And let's assume that we're not trying to support clients that have 1,000 staff members, and just literally by volume alone need you to have just a help desk, just a first line help desk that's got 50, 60 employees only. So push those bookends out. What about everything in the middle? Because everything in the middle, that's most of us, right? That's most MSPs. Probably have at least 3 employees and are probably going after businesses that have anywhere from what, like roughly 5 seats to a couple hundred seats. Like, so I think that's most of the market. So for the rest of the market, does size matter? Seriously, does it actually matter? Why did this MSP lose this deal that was theirs to lose? And how did the other MSP even have a shot here? So normally I would brush this off and I would basically say that this MSP that lost the deal just didn't have their act together. They were disorganized, didn't have good stack alignment, didn't know exactly who they were selling to, didn't know how to communicate their value. But they do those things. They do those things pretty well. And they do those things. This client was within their ICP. It was at the upper end of their ICP. It was within their ICP. They were capable of delivering the right service to this client and communicating that. Yet someone else who I suspect was, let's be fair, someone else who very likely also could deliver that, who couldn't quite communicate that as well, and probably didn't bid any lower, got the referral, well, got the client instead, in spite of a referral, because they were bigger. And what I think this brings back to, and I think the important lesson here for everybody listening here, does the size of your MSP matter? Yeah, at times it absolutely does. And if there's a certain ICP that you're going after that has a perception that they need a certain size organization to support them, obviously it matters then. And I think that there are certain organizations that it's implied that a larger company is more mature and more sophisticated. I think it can be important there, but largely, no, probably not. And I think it speaks to that challenge that a lot of MSPs have of not really being able to fully identify 100% of the pain from all the decision makers. And in this case, my guess would be, without knowing all the details, is that there were probably multiple decision makers at the client. The MSP only really found out the pain of some of them, and one or more of the decision makers had additional pain points because they had some fear and some risk that they felt wasn't being abated by this MSP, and that fear was assuaged by having just a larger organization. And so I bring all this up not only to get all of you to think about this a little bit and sort of consider if the clients you're going at are aligned with not only what you can deliver, but is the perception of what you can do also aligned? Because that's the part that I think a lot of our marketing and sales education that we get as MSPs kind of forgets to talk about. And if you're under the age of like 60, you were kind of programmed to think this way. So let's pull on that thread for a second. So if you grew up in, I don't know, anywhere from the late 60s through at least the 90s, you know what I'm talking about, where we were, the messaging we got as kids: don't judge a book by its cover, get to know someone, really learn what makes somebody who they are. Everybody has something unique and interesting to contribute. We've seen that now as all of us have gotten a little older and gotten into the position to influence branding and marketing from companies. We've seen companies switch their marketing focus to have, to be inclusive, to not shame things, to not push people away. And all of it is based around this idea that what this looks like shouldn't be a factor in judging somebody. Stop doing that. We were all told that's how the world works, except that's absolutely not how the world works, and it's never going to work that way until we evolve to some other version of humanity, because that goes against our built-in survival instincts as humans. That's why we made it this far, and that's why other animals have made it as far as they have, because animals that are good at judging stuff based on what it looks like or sounds like or smells like are the ones that live. So you're kind of genetically wired to be judgy based on superficial stuff. And I say all of this, psychological mumbo jumbo only because I think as much as we all want to believe that we have two businesses and they're going to enter into a relationship, they're going to connect on their values, and they're really going to be this one synergistic relationship, which is totally a goal we should shoot for, and a healthy, all the signs of a healthy relationship. People on the outside are still going to judge us for trivial bullshit. I had a client once that we were more than capable of supporting. It was a local bank, and we had other clients in a similar vertical. We were absolutely sized to meet all of their needs. We had the expertise. Our office at that time happened to be in a blue collar condo complex with like electricians and plumbers. Really good electrician, by the way. And this bank came by one of the days to look at some paperwork, and they walked in, and I remember this because the guy was wearing a shabby suit that, you know, was like one of those off the rack suits that didn't really fit him that well, but he was wearing a suit, and he made loud comments about how we weren't wearing suits and where we worked looked like kind of a mess. So they ended up not picking us because of that. And at that time, I didn't understand that. I thought that was irrational, and I was angry about that. And I was also a little bit judgmental about that because I grew up around people that actually had money, and you know they wouldn't have let him into their country clubs dressed with the regular suit like I would wear. So you know, I thought the irony of this guy, harumph. But what I've come to learn over time is that's absolutely how people think, and that is absolutely a decision making factor, and how you present yourself both as an individual, but if you think of your business as like a person for a minute, how that person presents itself absolutely will enter into the minds of people when they judge you. And first impressions and just feelings that people get for completely asinine reasons can stick in the back of their head and be this gnawing voice and can just kill a deal. And so bringing it all back, yeah, I think sometimes size matters. I think sometimes somebody is going to not be able to see that you are a very mature, highly dialed in, well oiled MSP that has a strong referral connection, that completely understands the industry and can deliver the best service because they look at you quickly and they're like, I don't like their shirts, or they don't look big enough. And whatever value prop wasn't qualified that triggered in the decision maker's head, that's enough to kill it. And that sucks. So if you're that MSP, if you're my friend's MSP in this case, don't give up. You're good at what you do. And you did everything right. And odds are there are going to be times where you do everything right and you still just don't win. And like I had said on the Reddit post the other day, you know, one of my favorite office quotes is Dwight Schrute talking to Ryan, you know, and it's basically sometimes there's no lesson, sometimes you just fail. And in this case, I think that was it. It was just failed. I don't think there's anything this MSP could have done different or better. They did everything awesome. And this client, this prospect, made a dumb decision because they made a judgment based on superficial stuff. And that's going to happen sometimes. And so, yeah, size matters, appearance matters, all that stuff matters, but doesn't mean you can control it. And it doesn't mean that you should feel bad about it sometimes when it bites you in the butt. That being said, I also don't want that to be anyone's excuse to be ignorant of it. You know, don't be a business slob. Don't allow the way you present what your company does, the good things you've built. Don't allow that to be washed away with somebody's first judgment. I don't think this MSP did that. I think this is a factor out of their control. But there are a lot of factors that are within your control. And so if you are an MSP, you are struggling a little bit. Like you've done the stuff. You're a good company, but you're still finding that they're picking other people. Take a minute and just kind of step back and judge yourself. Pretend your business is a person. Are you putting your best foot forward with everything else? You probably are, but you might not be. It's possible, and there could be something small that you missed. Think about it. Those subtle details, that can really be the way somebody will end up making a judgment about you. Have a great Thursday.